Coronavirus. This is a coronavirus rant. Good evening, YouTubers. It's me, Johnny. I watched a good video today. Well, it's actually a podcast, but I watched kind of the video as opposed to listening to the podcast. It was a Tom Woods video. It might have been 1 or 2 days old, but I can't remember what the title was, but it's about being a good citizen, and it's like sarcastic, being a good citizen and doing whatever the government says. Anyways, the guest was a guest from the United Kingdom. He's kind of a conservative writer, and he was complaining, well, not complaining, but he was talking about how even in the United Kingdom, even with a conservative government, the majority of people, including most prominent conservative politicians, are very much shutting their society down and using very draconian laws to shut their society down. As an example, now I did not know this. This is all news to me. I didn't know this. But if you go to the United Kingdom now and you return, it's like what Canada has proposed, but I'm not sure they've actually implemented yet. So when you go to the United Kingdom, you have to go to their own special COVID hotels. I think you probably have to have a test to enter, but I can't remember. But anyways, here's the thing. You have to spend £1,750 at this hotel, and I think you have to stay there a week. And I think the idea is you do this even without you're not even COVID positive. Anyways, the whole point of this is that this video that I was watching, which is one of the Tom Woods podcasts, was how crazy things are getting and how little opposition even from conservatives. I wish I could remember this gentleman's name, but he's pointing out how the mass of men and women in the UK are pretty much laying down and doing whatever the government says. And here's another thing he was talking about, that if you come into the UK, you have to, tell them where you were and a whole bunch of other private business about your health and all that. And if you lie and they figure that out, you can go to jail for 10 years. Now, here's the funny part. He was pointing out like pedophiles and rapists don't even get 10 years in the UK, which doesn't surprise me. But his disappointment, and mine too, and Tom Woods was talking about this, how all over the Western world, most countries are still locked down or partially locked down for coronavirus. Most countries don't seem to have a plan to stop this. They're just going to stay locked down. And most people seem to be willing to spend their savings to zero. Most people are willing to go bankrupt. They're going to let their businesses go bankrupt because they're not allowed to run their businesses. And they're going to do all this without a peep. They're not going to protest. They're not going to say anything. They're just going to do whatever the conservative or liberal politicians and policymakers decide they're going to do. They're not going to push back in the least. And most people in the West don't seem to be questioning the science behind all this because, as I've said in many videos, the death from coronavirus is 0.02. So 98% of the population who gets it lives. And it's well, actually, what I've read is 0.998. So if I did my math right, it's 0.02. It's not even 0.5% of people dying from this. Now, when I say that, I'm saying the worldwide average. I'm not saying one country over another, because some countries seem to get it worse. Some seem to get it less worse. But on average, it's not many people dying. And the guest was pointing out, it's less people dying from this than, say, the flu. Another thing both Tom Woods and the guest pointed out is, I think since 2008, maybe 2009, the death rate in general of people dying every year is stayed about the same all throughout this coronavirus. So not more or less people are dying, even of corona. People just dying of everything in general is about the same. Now, what I've read is suicides have gone up and things like that, like people who would have cancer or special treatments that they can't get because of this. they died sooner too because they couldn't get their cancer treatment or their treatments in general. And I have read that, but it hasn't been higher than normal or anything. But the rates of suicide have gone up. Now, what the results will be in 5 or 10 years, I don't know. But from what they're saying in this podcast, the results seem to be that there's going to be more and more bankruptcies of middle class and lower middle class citizens, less employment. Well, employment's going to change, but because of COVID, less employment. Like if you're not an online worker, you're like a laborer, or maybe you're a tradesman. But what you do, you can't do online. That kind of employment, we're going to see, at least for right now, take a hit because you're not allowed to work. Now, it depends what countries you're in. Again, I want to stress, depending on what part of the world you live in and stuff like that, maybe it won't affect you. But here's one example. Like Tanzania is not even going to have vaccines. The country of Tanzania is not going to have vaccines. So when we write the history books, we're going to find out countries who did the vaccines and countries who didn't, or who did them slow. We're going to find out how much that affected things. And we might find out this is all a big waste of money. It seems to me already we're finding out as the data comes in, this has been a huge waste of capital. I believe in the 80-20 principle. 80% of the capital has gone to most of the wealthier not millionaire, but billionaire and trillionaires. Most of this capital has been totally wasted and dissipated. And a lot of the middle and lower classes in the Western world, I can't speak to Latin America and Asia as much, but they're just totally bankrupt. I can say where I'm at in Central America, there's a lot more businesses going out of business than staying open. But that's mainly like bars and restaurants and things like that. And anything related to tourism, because before you could get, not taxis, but you could get, not buses, shuttles from various cities in Central America. Once you get out of Mexico, you can get a shuttle from one city to another city, and they weren't even really that expensive. They might be a little bit more expensive than a bus, but they were just a little bit more, and they're much faster than the buses. That's why they were so popular. Well, mostly those have gone away. There's a few, but they really raise their prices up like 10 times, 20 times. That's another thing they were talking about on the Tom Woods podcast, is how much certain prices have gone up like 10 times for certain things. Like just getting the corona test in various countries can be really cheap, or it can be really, really expensive. That's one thing that stopped travel. Now, my beef is, I think what's going to happen is this is going to last for many years. We're going to end up printing money, which could lead to, I think will lead to massive inflation. Not hyperinflation, but massive inflation. And then after the inflation comes, we'll get, probably it's pretty inevitable, we'll get a deflation. And between now and then, you could get a stock market correction that's historic and unprecedented, something like 29. And that could wipe out a lot more people. Forget about the inflation and the deflation. Just the markets crashing again is going to wipe out people's pensions. And that's another thing this coronavirus has taken away people talking about is the bankruptcy of most Western pensions. And in the Western world, in general, most pensions are underfunded. Now, I'll probably get some pushback, but if you go by government numbers, some seem to be funded, but you realize a lot of the definitions of what's well-funded has been stretched so far that to me it's meaningless. I don't think they're really that well-funded myself. I have a private pension in the U.S. that's supposed to be fully funded. I've got a letter maybe 6 months ago or a year ago. When I was in the States for a brief time, I read it, and it lowered the viability of the pension. It lowered it to the lowest point before they say it's bankrupt. So it was in what they call code red, like not very well funded. Now they're saying they're going to fund it. They're just saying they don't know how they're going to fund it. And then they're saying the next time I get a letter, it will probably be they're going to ask the pensioners in this pension to add more money to it. That's what's going to come next. They're going to say, well, put more money into a bad situation. Now, I don't know what will happen then. Maybe the U.S. will bail out these pensions. I don't know. I imagine it depends who's in office. And even when they bail it out, that will probably just lead to more inflation, which will just lead to more economic problems, which will eventually lead to deflation. And between now and then, I think the stock markets, the bond markets, the currency markets could be so wild, fluctuating so wildly that it'll tear the system apart. In fact, if you look at politics in the U.S., politics is tearing the U.S. apart right now. I'm not sure how it is in the UK, but according to the Tom Woods podcast, it appears to be both political parties on the left and on the right are cooperating more than they're not. And people may think that's good, but it could be bad because the UK, it appears to me, is destroying their economy even more than the US is. And it's really frightening. It's really sad, as a matter of fact. But anyways, that's just my rant. To me, it's all madness. I don't know what people are going to do, because we're going to get to a point where certain people can work online, other people can't. And a lot of people will be on the dole. How will they fund the dole? They're going to raise taxes a little bit. They're going to print more money, which will lead to more inflation. And then the whole thing could collapse into deflation. And by that time that happens, maybe they can put it off one or two more political cycles, but someone will be left holding the bag. And I don't know what they'll do then, because I wasn't in the States when, I was a little bit in the States when some of that rioting happened, but I don't know how the U.S. and Europe's going to handle more rioting in the streets. So far in Latin America, things are mellow. I like it here. And that's another thing, because I follow the Bitcoin scene and I follow some other things. There's all these different trends going on, but a lot of these trends are leading to where people from the Western world are leaving, and it's getting easier and easier for them to make that decision to leave and not come back, because politicians in the Western world, or more first world countries, they're making it difficult to earn a living. They're making it difficult to legally earn a living. They're making it difficult to legally abide by the regulation and tax and earn a living. I'm surprised, because I've actually heard some, what to me are popular Bitcoiners say, if the UK or anywhere else, that happened to be this gentleman was in the UK, if they make it illegal for Bitcoin, he said he's just going to move his family, because he can't even live. He can't live there anymore because he makes so much money from his business. He's not going to give that up. He said he was going to go to one of the islands off of Europe, which is I can't remember, but it's a very Bitcoin friendly island nation, but I can't remember it. Oh, it's Malta. He said he would. And not that he said it, but he said it so final and he said it so easily. He's already talked to his family. They said they want to go because they don't want to stay in the UK because of all the lockdowns, all the problems of living their lives. They don't have any problem leaving. And anyways, I've heard other people in the States are starting to say that. And even for myself, I'm starting to think, man, it's going to be more and more difficult to earn a living in the US. I don't know how that's going to work out. Because if the US and Canada and the UK make it harder and harder to earn a living, especially if you're not amongst the upper classes, where you can get lots of handouts from the government, I don't know what you're going to do. It's going to be interesting, because I follow a lot of different expat channels, and more people I come across are starting to have to make that hard decision how they're going to leave. What are they going to do to earn a living? Where are they going to live? How to qualify for residency? And that's another thing. Coronavirus is raising hell on legally getting visas. This is still Johnny's opinion that it appears to be becoming harder in some countries to get residency and maybe easier in other countries. I still think we need to wait, but so far at least parts of Central America are making it harder to get residency. They're not making it easier. And by that I mean income requirements, how they're going to verify income requirements, what's got to be apostolized or whatever, however they're going to do that. The kinds of income you can have, it looks to me more and more if you'll have to have government pension type guaranteed incomes to come to these countries and live here long term. That's really amazing. That's just, I don't think this is going to be enforced. I think they're going to have to walk this back. But again, so far a lot of my assessments have been wrong. We'll see what happens. I'm saying that because there's just not a lot of tourists coming. I don't really have an interest in Costa Rica, but I follow a few channels there. And apparently there's not a lot of people coming to Costa Rica, and they're making it harder with proof of insurance. Now, apparently Costa Rica made it so you don't have to have a COVID test, but you have to do other things like have insurance to go there. So if Costa Rica is going to drop it, I'm hopeful that other countries will too. Because the reason I mention this is it's becoming more apparent that some places enforce a COVID test, some don't. You can get fake COVID tests that say you passed. Like tourism is totally gone in a lot of places. These governments are desperate for revenue to tax. They're desperate for tourists to come back and rent their hotels and stay in their resorts. So it's, to me, going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Anyways, it's pre-Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to all my viewers. I hope you have a good Valentine's Day. I think that's tomorrow. Or was that yesterday? I don't know. I had a good day. I don't really care if it's Valentine's Day. But anyways, lots of people selling roses out here. And what's the other one? Oh, what are they called? Tulips. There's a lot of tulips here for some reason. I don't know why. But they're selling a lot of tulips in the markets. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you.